Guys, I'm wearing a forbidden piece of American technology right now. That's right, I'm wearing a Snuggie. Welcome back to Sleepless Tales. We'll be continuing Demian. Not too much to say, like, subscribe. I'll talk more in the next one. Anyways, we're halfway through the first chapter. Let's continue. Just previously, we had our main character individual was getting harassed by a guy named Cromer. Cromer's harassing him about his friend's apples because Cromer wants to report him to the police. So, let's continue with Demian. Cromer, I said, you mustn't tell. It'd be a beastly thing to do. Look, I'll give you my watch. Unluckily, it's the only thing I have, but you can have it. It's made of silver, added nervously. It's good workmanship, and it's only got some slight defect, which can easily be put right. He smiled and took the watch in his large hand. I looked at that hand and felt how rough and hostile it was towards me, and how it was trying to tighten its grip on my life and peace of mind. It's silver, I repeated nervously. I don't give a damn for your silver and your old watch, he said with withering scorn. Get it repaired yourself. But, friends, I exclaimed, trembling with fear, lest he walk off. Just wait a moment. Take the watch. It really is made of silver, and honestly, I haven't got anything else. He gave me a cold, scornful look. Well, you know who I'm going to see. Or I might even inform the police. The sergeant is a friend of mine. He turned as if to go. I held him back by his coat sleeve. He must not go. I would much rather die than have to suffer what happened if it went off like that. Friends, I implored, hot with emotion. Don't do anything stupid. It is a joke, isn't it? It's a joke, all right, but it might be an expensive one for you. Just tell me, friends, what I am to do, and I'll do whatever you like. His eyes narrowed, and he laughed again. Don't be a fool, he said, with false good humor. You know as well as I do. I can earn 2 marks, and I'm not rich. You know I can't afford to chuck them away, but you're rich. You've got a watch. You've only got to give me 2 marks, and everything will be all right. I grasped his logic, but 2 marks? It was far beyond my means, and as unattainable as 10, 100, 1,000 marks. I did not have the money. There was a money box which Mother kept for me, and it contained a few 10 and 5 pfennig pieces, put in by uncles when they came to visit us, and by other family friends on similar occasions. Apart from that, I had nothing. I was not given any pocket money in that age. I haven't a thing, honestly, I said gloomily. I haven't any money, but I'll give you anything else. I've got a book about Injuns and soldiers and a compass. I'll fetch it for you. Cromer merely contracted his lips in an evil sneer, spat on the ground. Talk sense, he commanded. You can keep your stupid rubbish. A compass. Don't make me angry. Do you hear? And hand over the money. But I haven't any. They don't give me any. I can't do anything about it. Bring me 2 marks tomorrow morning, then. I'll wait for them downstairs after school. See you have them ready, or you'll find out what happens if you don't. Yes, but where am I going to get them from when I haven't got any? There's plenty of money in your house. That's up to you. Tomorrow, after school. I tell you, if you don't bring it... He flashed an intimidating glance at me, spat again, vanished like a shadow. I felt unable to go upstairs. My life was wrecked. I thought vaguely of running away and never returning or of drowning myself. I sat down in the dark on the bottom step of our outside staircase, withdrew into myself, and abandoned myself to my misery. Lena found me there, weeping, when she came down with a basket to collect some firewood. I begged her to say nothing about it, and went upstairs. On the right of the glazed door hung my father's hat and mother's sunshade. An atmosphere of homeliness and affection hung all about these things. My heart warmed to them gratefully, as that of the prodigal son must have, when he was confronted with the sight and smell of the old familiar rooms of his house. But none of this was mine any longer. It all belonged to the world of my parents, and I was deeply and guiltily engulfed in the alien tide. I was involved in excitement and wrongdoing, threatened by the enemy and beset by dangers, fear, and scandal. The hat and the sunshade, the good old sandstone floor, the large picture over the hall cupboard, and the voices of my elder sisters coming from the living room. It was all more moving and precious than ever, but it had ceased to be a comfort and something I could rely on and become a kind of reproach. This was no longer my world, and I could have no part of it in its cheerfulness and peace. My feet were defiled. I could not wipe them on the mat. I was accompanied by shadows of which this world of home knew nothing. I had had plenty of secrets, plenty of scares before, but it had all been light-hearted compared to what I was bringing back with me that day. Fate was tracking me down. Hands were reaching for me, from which my mother could not protect me, of which she knew nothing. What my crime was, theft or lying, I had not sworn a false oath to God, and everything that was sacred did not come into it. My sin was not this or that. My sin was that I was in league with the devil. Why had I associated with him? Why had I listened to Cromer more than I had ever done to my father? Why had I lied about that theft, fathered myself with crime, as if it had been a heroic deed? And now the devil held me in his clutches, and the enemy was at my shoulder. For the time being, my fear was not of the next day. It was the horrible certainty that I was treading the downhill path that led into darkness. I felt that my first lapse was bound to be followed by others, and that my presence among my brothers and sisters, my demonstrations of affection toward my parents were a lie, that I was living a fate and a lie, and I was hiding from them. For a moment, a flash of confidence and hope lit inside as I stood looking at my father's hat. I would tell him the whole story. The judgment he passed and the punishment he meted out would soon make him into my confidant savior. It would only mean the kind of penance I had done often enough, a difficult and painful hour, a difficult and rueful request for forgiveness. How sweet it all sounded, how tempting it was, but it was no use. I knew that I would not do it. I knew that I now had a secret, a debt, which I had to work out for myself. Perhaps I was at the parting of the ways, and perhaps from now on I would always belong to the wicked, depend on them and obey them, become one of their number. I had played the man and hero, and now I must bear the consequences. And I was glad that my father upbraided me about my muddy shoes. It sidestepped the issue. The graver sin passed unnoticed, and I got away with a reproach which I secretly transferred to the other affair. In so doing, a strange new feeling lit up inside me, an unpleasant, ruthless feeling full of barbs. I felt superior to my father. For the moment, I despised his ignorance. His reprimand only about the muddy boots seemed trivial. If only you knew, I thought, and felt like the criminal who was being tried for stealing a loaf of bread when he had confessed to a murder. It was an odious, hostile feeling, but it was strong and somehow fascinated me and took a firmer hold of me than any other aspect of my secret and my guilt. Perhaps, I thought, Cromer's already gone to the police and denounced me, and while I'm being treated here as a small child, storms are gathering above my head. This was the all-important and permanent element in the whole experience, as I've related it. It was the first crack in the sacrosanct person of my father, the first incision in the pillar on which my childhood's life had rested, but which every man must destroy before he can become his own true self. The real, inner line of our fate consists of these experiences which are hidden from other people. A gash or wound of this grows together again. It is healed and forgotten, but in the inner recesses of our minds it lives on and bleeds. I was so horrified by this new feeling that I'd willingly have given at my father's feet and begged for forgiveness. But you cannot crave forgiveness for anything fundamental, and a child is as deeply aware of that as any wise man. I felt the need to reflect on my problem and plan out my course for the next day, but I failed completely. There was as much as I could do in the whole evening to try and acclimate myself to the different atmosphere in our sitting room. Wall clock and table, Bible and mirror, and bookshelf and pictures were likewise leaving me behind, and I had to gaze at them with a frozen heart as I saw my world, my good, happy life, becoming a thing of the past and breaking away from me. There was no escaping the fact that new taproots held me firmly anchored in a dark and alien land. For the first time in my life, I was tasting death, and death tastes bitter, for it is birth pangs, fear and dread before some terrible renewal. I was relieved when at length I found myself in bed. Just before, as a final torment, I had been subjected to family prayers, and we had sung one of my favorite hymns, but I could not join in. Every note was gall and bitterness, nor could I join in on the prayers when my father pronounced the blessing, and when he ended, God keep us all, ... I felt rejected from the family circle. The grace of God was with them, but not with me. I went up, cold and exhausted. When I had lain in bed for a while in warmth and comfort, my heart once more returned back in fear and hovered in a panic around the events of the day. Mother had said her usual good night. Her steps still sounded in the room. Her candle still glowed through a chink in the door. Now, I thought, she is coming back. She's guessed. She will have me a good night kiss and question me sympathetically about it all, and then I can cry and the lump in my throat will melt, and then I'll hug her and tell everything about it will be right again. It'll all be saved. After the chink in the door had become dark again, I listened for a while, feeling that it must and it would happen. Then my mind went back to the incident, and I seemed to be looking my enemy in the face. I could see him clearly. He had screwed up one eye, and his lips were twisted in a leer, and even as I watched, I was consumed by the inescapable truth, and he became bigger and uglier, and a fiendish glint lit up in his eye. He stood close beside me until I fell asleep, but then I dreamed not of him, and the day that was over, but that we were traveling in a boat. My sisters, my parents, and myself, and we were surrounded by the peaceful and heightened glow of a day's holiday. I woke up in the middle of the night, still conscious of the aftertaste of that blessedness, and my sister's white summer dresses still shining in the sun when I fell from paradise, back into reality, and once more stood face to face with the enemy and the evil eye. Next day, when Mother came hurrying up and called out that it was late and asked why I was still in bed, I must have looked ill when she asked if anything was the matter with me. I had a fit of vomiting. It was something gained. It was wonderful to be slightly ill and allowed to lie in bed and drink chamomile tea and listen to Mother tidying up in the next room, and Lena dealing with the butcher in the hall outside. A morning off from school was something magic and fairy-like. The sun played in the room, but it was not the same sun they shut out with the green curtains at school, but even that I could not enjoy today. It had a false ring about it. If I could only die. But as on so many occasions, I was only slightly ill, and nothing happened. It saved me from school, but not from Cromer, who was waiting for me in the marketplace at 11 o'clock, and my mother's amiability brought me no comfort. It was heavy and distressing. I pretended to be asleep while I pondered over it all again. It was no use, and had to be at the market at 11 o'clock, so I got up quietly at 10 and said I was feeling better. It meant, as usual in such cases, that I must either go to bed again or return to school in the afternoon. I said that I wanted to go to school. I had made a plan. I could not go to Cromer empty-handed. I must get hold of the little money box that belonged to me. I knew there was not nearly enough money in it, but it was something, and I felt that something was better than nothing, and that Cromer at all costs must be appeased. I felt guilty when I crept into my mother's room in my stockinged feet and took my money box from her writing table, but my conscience troubled me less than on the previous day. My heart beat so fast that I nearly suffocated, and the situation was not improved when I discovered on first examining it at the bottom of the staircase that the box was locked. But it was not difficult to force. It was merely a matter of breaking a thin template grid. I felt terrible about breaking it. I was committing a theft. Before this, I had done nothing worse than pilfer lumps of sugar or fruit, but this was stealing, although it was my own money. I realized defiantly that I was taking a step nearer to Cromer and his world, and that it was so easy to go down bit by bit. The devil might come for me now. There was no way back. I counted the money nervously. It sounded so much in the box and was so painfully little in my hand. It came to 65 pfennig. I concealed the box on the ground floor, clasped the money in my hand, and left the house without passing through the gateway. I thought I heard somebody upstairs shouting after me, but I hurried away. There was still plenty of time. I crept off by roundabout ways through the alleys of a transformed town, under which clouds, such as I had never seen before, passed houses which stared at me and men who eyed me with suspicion. It occurred to me en route, and one of my school friends had once found a florin in the cattle market. I wished I could pray that God might perform a miracle and allow me to make a similar find, but I had forfeited the right to pray. And, in any case, it would not have mended the box. Franz Cromer spied me coming from a distance, but he sauntered slowly towards me without appearing to notice me. When he was close, he beckoned me imperiously to follow him and went quickly on down the Stogasse and across the road without once turning round until he finally stopped before a new building among the last houses. It had not yet been completed. The walls stood bare, and there were no doors or windows. And Cromer looked all around him and went in through the gap for the door, and I followed. He beckoned to me behind the wall and stretched out his hand. "Have you got it?" he asked coldly. I drew my clenched hand out of my pocket and emptied my money into his flat palm. He had counted before the last 5 pfennig piece had rattled out. "There's 65 pfennig in here," he said, looking at me hard. Yes," I said nervously. That's all I have. I know it's not enough, but it's all that I have." "I didn't think you were such a fool," he reproved, almost mildly. "Things should be done right and proper between men of honor. I won't take anything from you. That isn't correct. See? Take your nickel coins back. There. The other chap, you know who, doesn't try to beat me down. He pays up." "But I haven't any more. It was my money box." "That's your affair. But I won't upset you. You can still owe me 1 mark 35, and when shall you get it?" "Oh, you'll get it all right, Cromer. I can't quite say now. Perhaps I'll have some more money tomorrow or the day after. You realize that I can't breathe a word to my father about this." "That's nothing to do with me. I'm not one to do you harm. I get out my money by midday, and I'm poor. You've got good clothes on and get better meals than me, but I won't say anything. I'm prepared to wait a bit. The day after tomorrow. I'll give you a whistle at midday, and then you can settle with me. You know my whistle." He let me hear it, though I had heard it often enough. "Yes," I said, I know it." He went off as if I had nothing to do with them. It had been a business transaction between us. Nothing more. I think Cromer's whistle would frighten me, even today, if I suddenly heard it. It seemed to me that I heard it repeatedly. There was no place, game, work, or thought which his whistle did not penetrate. The whistle, which made me a slave and had become my fate. I frequently went into our small flower garden, which I was very fond of on those mild, colorful autumn afternoons, and a strange urge prompted me to return to some of the games of my earlier boyhood. I was playing the part of someone younger than myself, who was good, frank, innocent, and secure, but in the midst of all this, I was expected, and yet horribly surprising and frightening. Cromer's whistle would sound from somewhere, interrupting my games, shattering my dreams. Then I had to go and follow my tormentor to odious places, render him an amount, and let myself be pressed for payment. The whole affair was probably not lasted more than a few weeks, but to me, they seemed like years, an eternity. Only rarely was I able to produce an odd 5 pfennig piece or a groschen stolen from the kitchen table when Lena had left the shopping basket there. Each time I received a reprimand from Cromer, who heaped scorn on my head. I was cheating him trying to do him out of his rightful property. I was robbing him, making him miserable. Rarely have I felt so distressed in my life, never more desperate, or so much in someone else's clutches. No one inquired about the money box which I had filled with counters and restored to its place. But the scandal might break over my head any day. I was more frightened of my mother when she crept quietly up on me than of Cromer's strident whistle. Was she coming to ask about the box? As I had appeared before my persecutor, without money on many occasions, he began to find other means of torturing me. He made me work for him. He had to do various errands for his father, which I had to do for him. Or he required me to execute some difficult feat. Hop for 10 minutes on one leg, attach a scrap of paper to an overcoat of some passerby. These tortures continued many a night in my dreams as I lay in the sweat of a nightmare. I began to feel ill. I kept having fits of sickness and was easily chilled, but at nights I sweated again. Mother suspected some hidden reason and showed me a great deal of sympathetic solicitude, which only made me feel worse, since I could not respond to her confidence. One night, she brought a piece of chocolate up to me when I was in bed. It was an echo of earlier years, when I'd often been vouchsafed similar little treats at night, if I had been good. Now she stood there, holding out the chocolate. I felt so ill that I could only shake my head. She asked me what was the matter and stroked my hair, but I could only jerk out, No, I don't want anything." She deposited the chocolate on the bedside table and left me. When she tried to find out the reason for my behavior the next day, I pretended not to understand. On one occasion, she sent for the doctor, who examined me and prescribed cold ablutions in the mornings. My condition at that time was a kind of delirium. I lived in the midst of an ordered piece of our house, nervous, tormented like a ghost, and with no part in the life of the others, and rarely able to forget my troubles even for an hour. Towards my father, who was often irritated and called me to account, I was cold and uncommunicative. And that's the end of chapter 1. We'll probably be continuing through the rest of the book in this way, where we'll have these sort of short-ish chapters, because doing just the whole chapter in one go is much longer than I want to do, and then these are a little bit shorter than I want to do, but they're okay. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that first chapter of Demian. It's very far removed from No Longer Human. Actually, it's a very different story. Well, same so far, similar-ish plotline, but it's different. It's written very different. I think a big part of it being written different is that this one was written in German, which is loosely English-like, sort of loosely. It's not as quite so far removed as Japanese, so kind of sounds better in English. It runs nicer. Anyways, I'll see you in the next part. You have a great night. Sleepless Tales as always. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and favorite. Maybe even comment. Who knows? If you have something you'd like to be read for you, please leave it in the comments, and I might do it. Who knows? Anyways, I'll catch you later. You have a good night. Goodbye.